Hi there and welcome to this video in the IBM Cloud Foundation Skills Series. And in this video, which is going to be a lab, I'm going to show you how to actually create a Kubernetes instance within the IBM Cloud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the console and then I'm going to actually show you the steps for provisioning the Kubernetes instance. So I'm going to show you the provisioning screen. I'm actually going to go through and actually provision a free cluster as well. And then once the cluster's actually been provisioned and it's completed the process, I'm just going to give you a very quick post-provisioning tour as well. So without further ado, let's get over to the IBM Cloud Dashboard. So here I am in my dashboard at cloud.ibm.com. So if I want to go ahead and create a Kubernetes cluster, well, right now I've got a tile here that will give me a bit of a tutorial on how to do it. I can also go and look through the catalog, but if I want to do it as a shortcut, then I can also look on this left-hand side menu, and if I just hover over this one here, you can see that one says Kubernetes. So I can click on that little box, and it takes me to the Kubernetes screens. So you can have a bit of a look around here. So here you can sort of see some good information about Kubernetes. Something here offering you the opportunity to try OpenShift instead. We'll talk about OpenShift in a later video. Some information on pricing. If you do decide to really get into Kubernetes, then you can join an IBM Slack channel as well, where you can start to talk to some of IBM's top engineers around Kubernetes. And there's some links to the docs and also some other really good videos as well by colleagues that are well worth watching as well. Okay, so I'm going to use this left-hand menu here. Just going to ignore these other options here. I'm just going to go straight to clusters. And so basically from here, this is where I'm going to create my cluster. So very quickly, you can see there's a few messages here. So this just keeps me up to date with what's going on in the service. But at the moment, you can see that I don't actually have any clusters. So let's go and create one. So I can just click the Create Cluster button here. So what do I need to think of here? Well, basically I just need to, like any other service in the IBM Cloud, I just need to go down and put the details into the form. So first of all, I need to think about my pricing plan. So I've got a standard plan or a free plan. We're actually going to create a free tier, but I'll go through the standard options for now and then go back to free. So with standard, it's obviously a plan where you're paying some money for your cluster. So we're going to stick to Kubernetes, and what you can see here is that there are a number of Kubernetes releases available. So choose the one that best suits you. So the most recent one that we have at the moment at the time of recording is 1.19.5. By default, it's pointing me at 1.18.13. So I'm going to stick with that. But you can go all the way back to 1.6. Now, whichever one you choose, you will be able to update your cluster to the latest release in the future. So so even if you pick 16, then if you wanted to migrate or update to the latest version, you can still do that as part of cluster maintenance. But again, that's something that you need to do for yourself. Okay, so once I've chosen Kubernetes, now again I can choose Red Hat here if I want to, but Red Hat OpenShift that is. I'm going to stick with Kubernetes. I then just need to decide what infrastructure I want to run on. So do I want to use classic infrastructure? So that's bare metal servers or classic virtual machines. Again, remember, if I use classic virtual machines, then I have a greater range of options around some of the storage that I can use, persistent storage facilities that I use. The other thing I can do is use VPC. So I can go either way. I can use VPC or I can use classic. So so for this, let's stick with classic for now. If I just quickly choose VPC, let's show you what happens there. So basically, I need to make sure that I have a VPC that's available. So I've got a couple of VPCs that I've already created. So before creating your Kubernetes cluster, you'll need to create a VPC for yourself. If you're not up on VPC yet, then go and look at my VPC videos in this series and build yourself a VPC. And then the screens from there are pretty much the same. So we won't go through all of these, but that's basically a prerequisite if you want to use VPC, is to create a VPC before you get to this screen. So I'm going to stick with classic and for this example, and then I just need to select a resource group. So this is IAM managed. So which resource group do I want to go to? So let's choose my rules dev resource group for this. And then I need to choose where I actually want to deploy my my cluster. So I can choose my geography first. So I can choose from Asia Pacific, Europe, North America, South America. So I'm choosing Europe because that's where I'm based. Then I can choose either single zone or multi-zone. So remember, if you choose single zone, then these are the different options in Europe. So these are the different single zone options that I have in Europe in terms of locations. But if I choose single zone, then I can't make it multi-zone later on. So just remember that if you're thinking about high availability, if you want to be more highly available, then maybe you need to be in a multi-zone rather than a single zone. So just bear that in mind. But again, I can choose whichever zone here that I want to. If I choose multi-zone, then I'm choosing a metro, basically, so Frankfurt or London. So let's say London. And there you can see that I'm then given the option to deploy workers in well, that's 4 different zones across London. So I'll just take that back to single zone again, and let's say select London 2. Then you can see that I don't then get that option to put things into different zones. So let's go back to multi-zone for the sake of this example. So what I can then do is choose which zones that I want to put workers in. So I don't have to use all of the zones. I can just, for instance, start off with one zone. So I can go single zone. But then if I want to build up into different zones to make it more highly available later on, then it gives me the option to do that. So let's choose 2 zones for now. So you can see that I've got some VLANs already in London 2. I don't have any in London 4. So if I were to create this, then VLANs will be created for me as I do this. So I basically choose the zones, the locations where I want my workers to go. Then I create my first worker pool. So remember, worker pool is basically a number of nodes, which are the worker nodes, and they all have the same flavor. So the same number of CPUs, the same amount of memory, which will then run my workload. So again, this so by default this gives me some virtual shared devices, but I can change the flavor. So if I click change flavor, then this gives me the full range. So I can choose bare metal, I can choose virtual shared servers, I can choose virtual dedicated servers, and then I have different use cases as well. Again, this is similar in VPC, although in VPC obviously I don't have bare metal or virtual dedicated options for the time being. So I'm going to choose virtual shared. Let's choose virtual shared, and then I can choose some of these one of these options. So let's choose the smallest one for now, and then just click save worker pool flavor. So that tells me what my flavor is. So 2 CPUs and 4 GB of RAM. Then I just need to choose how many worker nodes do I want to use per zone. So remember, this is per zone. So you can see here that it's actually telling me that it's 6 workers in total. So that's because I'm looking at 3 worker nodes over 2 zones. So my 2 zones are London 2 and London 4. So 3 times 2 gives me 6. So obviously I want to change that. Then I can go accordingly and see that the number of actual workers is the number of machines that will be provisioned for me goes up accordingly. And obviously if I then choose to go for another zone, you can see that it's 3 times 4 is now 12. I can go 4 times 2 is 8. So depending on the number of zones and the number of workers per zone, it will actually work out the number of actual workers, the actual number of machines that will be provisioned as part of your cluster. So for this, let's use the example of 2 zones and two nodes per zone. So that gives me a total of 4 worker nodes. That's 4 servers that this will provision. I can choose whether to encrypt the local disk. I think really you'd probably want to leave that on. Can't think of any reason why you'd not want to encrypt the local disk. And then you can choose your endpoints. So you can choose either public endpoints, private and public endpoints only, or private endpoints only. So if you've got a private workload that you're going to access through other servers within IBM Cloud, for instance, you could use private only. But I think for most people it's public and private, so we'll leave that at that at the moment. Obviously, if you need any internet access to your to the applications in your cluster, then you would need to choose public endpoints or private and public endpoints to give you that access. So we then have this infrastructure permissions checker. So you get this if you are using classic infrastructure, and this is to make sure that you have the right permissions granted to you if you're not the account owner from the classic infrastructure permissions. So if you see that there's any things missing here, you probably get a red cross or something. Then you need to go and talk to your administrator, or you need to go and look for yourself to see what permissions you might need to grant. Again, there's some information about that in the docs as well. So once you've seen that, the next thing is the resource details, so the cluster name. So what do you want to call this cluster? So I want to call this my my demo cubes cluster. Let's try that. So I might want to call it that, and then give it some tags. So again, you can see that in the documents in the resources tab when in the console. So so that's basically how you would create a standard plan Kubernetes cluster. Now, if I want to choose the free plan, so I'm going to use the free plan for these demos, I just choose free. By the way, you can only ever have one free Kubernetes cluster in your account at any one time, and they will last for 30 days. So after 30 days, the cluster will be automatically deleted. So what you'll notice here is that you get far fewer options. So I can't actually change the version of my Kubernetes cluster. I'm restricted to version 1.18, and again, I can't choose anything else like the size of my machines, or whether I want this in VPC or Classic. So this will actually reside in Classic. So again, I just give it a name. So I'm going to call this my cubes cluster free, and then I choose a resource group. So I'm going to choose rules dev for mine, and then I just click create. So it's just as easy as that. So let's click create. Let's create a free cluster. Now, if you're running a light account, then it may be that you can't create a free cluster. So if you do want to create a free cluster, then you will actually need to move to a pay-as-you-go account by putting in your credit card details. You won't be charged for this, but at least you will be able to create a free cluster and also use other free services as well as light services within your account. So I've got an error here saying there was a problem tagging your cluster. Try again later. To be honest, I'm not too worried about that error. It will still create my cluster for me. For some reason, there's just been a little bit of an issue with the tagging. So I'm just going to dismiss that. So we now move to this screen, and you can actually see that the cluster is actually being created, and you can see that it's now preparing the master and the workers. So you can see here also that my cluster will expire in 30 days. So again, it will be deleted in 30 days time. So we'll leave it there for now. This will probably take about 20 or 30 minutes to provision. So I'll pause the video there, and we'll come back when it's finished creating. Okay, so there we go. My cluster has now finished provisioning. So you can see that it's now saying that it's normal. Again, you can see that it's going to expire in 30 days time. But let's have a quick look around. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of what's on these tabs over here. So in terms of access, this gives you some information about actually accessing and starting to work with your cluster. So what we'll do is we'll probably cover this in the next video when we actually log into the cluster for the first time, actually start to do something with it. But if you haven't already, you can start to download the CLI tools. But what we'll probably do is actually use the IBM Cloud Shell where all those things are actually already installed. But we'll look at more detail at these in the next video. So if we click the Overview tab, then this gives you a bit of an overview of what your cluster actually looks like. So down on the left-hand side here, you can see there's a cluster ID. You can see that the master is ready to go as well. It gives you the version number and what kind of infrastructure this uses. So you can see that this is a free cluster which runs on classic infrastructure, and you can see that it's actually been provided for me in Mex01, so this cluster must be down in Mexico somewhere. Again, you can see when it's created, and then if you actually want to connect some logging to this, so if you want to use log analysis with logDNA, then you can start to connect those things. We've got monitoring, which is monitoring with Sysdig, so we can connect things up to it, and perhaps we'll show that in a later video as well. Okay, so over on the right hand side, you can see that my cluster is normal. So here you can see that I've just got the one worker node, and again, because it's a free cluster, I've only got one worker node. But if it was a standard cluster, then maybe I'd have 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 worker nodes, and this would then tell me whether or not my nodes were normal. So if, say, I have three nodes and one of them was maybe knocked out, then this would show 66% normal, so, or 66.3% normal or something. So obviously this adds up to 100 because I've got one node and that's healthy. So again, then you can just down here see the different state of the worker nodes are in. With this little panel here, you can then see how busy your cluster is. So I've got nothing running on this cluster at the moment. So you can see that it's showing me as 0 total CPU usage and 0 memory usage. But again, if I had a workload on there, then I could see how busy my machine is. So obviously, if it was quite heavily loaded, then that might be a signal for me to actually add nodes to my cluster. So if I have a quick look at the this worker nodes tab, so this just shows me the worker nodes that I've already got. So you can see that I've just got the one node here. Now, if I want to, I can actually add a node. I can't do it on here because it's a free cluster, but I can upgrade the cluster if I want to create a standard cluster, so then I can add nodes to it. But I'm not going to do that now. But again, if this was a standard cluster and I needed to add worker nodes because it was quite loaded, then I can easily do that from there without having to recreate my cluster. Then I can have worker pools. So again, worker pools are, so a pool is a collection of worker nodes that are similar or are the same. So again, if I want to, I can, so right now I've got one worker pool. So this is, if I click on it, it will show me the nodes in my pool. And again, if I want to, I can add pools, but again, because it's a free cluster, I can't, but I can upgrade it to actually add some more nodes to it. Then I've got this Addons tab. So this is quite useful. So again, this gives me some tools that I can actually add to my cluster, and this is actually done through templates. So I can choose a few here. So things like autoscaler will be useful. So that helps me automatically scale up and down my worker nodes automatically. So that would be quite useful in a production environment. And then I have lots of other tools here as well. So diagnostics and debug, a terminal tool, and other bits and pieces as well. And then finally, I've got a tab here for DevOps. So if I wanted to actually start to use DevOps, so create a continuous delivery tool chain, for instance, so when I have my application, I can use a DevOps tool chain to take the code that I've written, deploy it into a container, actually deploy that container automatically to my cluster as well. So again, we might look at that in a later video. So I'm just going to go back to the access screen. So that's about it. The only other thing I'll show you very quickly is the Kubernetes dashboard. So let's just start that up as well. So again, this is a fairly simple dashboard. So you can see it's just loading. So it's a fairly simple dashboard, which helps me see the things that are being deployed, and allows me to do some bits and pieces of management, etc. around it in a bit more of a GUI environment. So again, we might come and have a look at that in a later video. And that's it for this video. So hopefully you can see that provisioning an IBM Cloud Kubernetes service cluster is actually really simple, be it whether you're provisioning a free cluster, which is what we've done, or actually provisioning a standard cluster with multiple nodes, maybe in multiple different regions. Probably takes about the same time, 15 to 20 minutes for the cluster to actually provision. So it's really quick and simple to get going fast. So hopefully if you enjoyed this video, if you have, then please feel free to like, and hopefully you'd want to subscribe to my channel too if you haven't already. In the next video, we're going to dig a little bit deeper and actually log into our cluster and start doing some things with it. So hopefully we'll see you in the next time. But until then, thanks very much for watching.